So what are the basics of good writing? I think there's 4. You need to understand the parts of speech. You need to understand how punctuation works. You need to understand the difference between active and passive voice. And you need to understand the difference between showing and telling. When it comes to the parts of speech, you really need to understand what a noun, verb, adjective, and adverb are. It's helpful if you understand the other parts of speech as well: conjunction, preposition, conjugation, articles, interjections. But those first 4 are really essential. My thoughts on punctuation are pretty similar. There's 4 punctuation marks that you really need to master, and that's the period, the comma, quotation mark, and the semicolon. You need to understand the other punctuation marks too, when they're used and what they're used for. But in most good writing, be aware that exclamation points, brackets, parentheses, and colons are not used very frequently. If there's a lot of those dotted throughout your piece, that's probably a sign that you're an amateur. It's super important that you learn the difference between passive and active voice. And a lot of that is going to come down to the difference between passive and active verbs and tense. So that's going to go back to your parts of speech and understanding grammar and how the English language works. Weak writing is almost always passive writing and writing that tells rather than shows. Showing and telling, again, goes back to the parts of speech. Showing, you're going to have a lot more concrete nouns and verbs, almost no passive tense. You're going to say things like little, bright, hard, red. You're going to use your adjectives a lot in showing writing versus telling writing. Telling writing, you're going to summarize a lot more, skate over a lot more. She saw something and felt scared, rather than the bushes rustled and she saw bright black eyes gleaming through the undergrowth. Simple differences. If you've mastered these 4 things, you could write a piece about going to the grocery store, and I'd probably read the whole thing because it's that well written. If you haven't mastered these 4 things, you could have the greatest story ever, and no one will want to read it because it'll be such a pain to slog through. It'll give them a headache just looking at it. If you really want to get a feel for the importance of these 4 points, you can check out the link below. In one version, you'll see all these things done well. Concrete writing, active language, showing rather than telling, good grammar, good punctuation. In the other version, I'm going to do all those things super wrong and super bad on purpose. I'm going to overdo it so you can kind of see what that looks like in writing, what that weak writing, what that bad writing looks like. And you can kind of tell just by looking at the piece, whoa, that's a lot of colons and parentheses and exclamation points, or wow, this one has a lot of like concrete nouns and action verbs, and just kind of get a sense for the difference between those. And then you can start to look out for those things in your own writing. Make sure you're using the parts of speech in the best possible way. Make sure you're using punctuation correctly, that you're showing rather than telling, and that you're writing in an active voice rather than a passive voice. Once you've really mastered these 4 things, you can start thinking about characters, setting, point of view, world building, voice and style, editing, outlines, scenes, pacing, all that other stuff. I'll talk about all of these things in later videos, so subscribe if you want to keep learning more and fulfill your dream of becoming an author. Good luck and keep writing.